What it do? This your girl Empress Goddess of Georgia Peach. Let's get in here with the epic of Gilgamesh.
When the gods created Gilgamesh, they gave him a perfect body. Shamash, the glorious sun, endowed him with beauty. Adad, the god of storm, endowed him with courage. The great gods made his beauty perfect, surpassing all others, terrifying like a great wild bull. 2/3 they made in God, and 1/3 man. In Uruk he built walls, a great rampart, and the temple of blessed Iana, for the god of the firmament, Anu, and for Ishtar, the goddess of love. Look at it still today. The outer wall where the cornice runs, it shines with the brilliance of copper, and the inner wall it has no equal. Touch the threshold, it is ancient. Approach Iana, the dwelling of Ishtar, our lady of love and war, and like which no latter-day king, no man alive can equal. Climb upon the wall of Uruk, walk along it, I say, regard the foundation terrace and examine the masonry. Is it not burnt brick and good? The 7 sages laid the foundations. 1. The
memory for many centuries. Yes, tens of centuries. Kybalion, a study of the Hermetic philosophy of ancient Egypt and Greece, by 3 initiates. The lips of wisdom are closed, except to the ears of understanding. Originally published by the Yogi Publication Society, Masonic Temple, Chicago, Illinois, copyright 1908. This recording is a production of the Master Key Society, copyright 2021, Master Key Society. To Hermes Trismegistus, known by the ancient Egyptians as the Great Great and Master of Masters, this little volume of Hermetic teachings is reverently dedicated. Introduction. We take great pleasure in presenting to the attention of students and investigators of the secret doctrines this little work based upon the world-old Hermetic teachings. There has been so little written upon this subject, notwithstanding the countless references to the teachings in the many works upon occultism, that the many earnest searchers after the arcane truths will doubtless welcome the appearance of the present volume. The purpose of this work is not the enunciation of any special philosophy or doctrine, but rather is to give to the students a statement of the truth that will serve to reconcile the many bits of occult knowledge that they may have acquired, but which are apparently opposed to each other, and which often serve to discourage and disgust the beginner in the study. Our intent is not to erect a new temple of knowledge, but rather to place in the hands of the student a master key with which he may open the many inner doors in the temple of mystery through the main portals he has already entered. There is no portion of the occult teachings possessed by the world which have been so closely guarded as the fragments of the Hermetic teachings which have come down to us over the tens of centuries which have elapsed since the lifetime of its great founder, Hermes Trismegistus, the scribe of the gods, who dwelt in old Egypt in the days when the present race of men was in its infancy. Contemporary with Abraham, and, if the legends be true, an instructor of that venerable sage, Hermes was, and is, the great central sun of occultism, whose rays have served to illumine the countless teachings which have been promulgated since his time. All the fundamental and basic teachings embedded in the esoteric teachings of every race may be traced back to Hermes. Even the most ancient teachings of India undoubtedly have their roots in the original Hermetic teachings. From the land of the Ganges, many advanced occultists wandered to the land of Egypt and sat at the feet of the master. From him they obtained the master key, which explained and reconciled their divergent views, and thus the secret doctrine was firmly established. From other lands also came the learned ones, all of whom regarded Hermes as the master of masters, and his influence was so great that in spite of the many wanderings from the path on the part of the centuries of teachers in these different lands, there may still be found a certain basic resemblance and correspondence which underlies the many and often quite divergent theories entertained and taught by the occultists of these different lands today. The student of comparative religions will be able to perceive the influence of the Hermetic teachings in every religion worthy of the name, now known to man, whether it be a dead religion or one in full vigor in our own times. There is always a certain correspondence in spite of the contradictory features, and the Hermetic teachings act as the great reconciler. The life work of Hermes seems to have been in the direction of planting the great seed truth, which has grown and blossomed in so many strange forms, rather than to establish a school of philosophy which would dominate the world's thought. But nevertheless, the original truths taught by him have been kept intact in their original purity by a few men in each age, who, refusing great numbers of half-developed students and followers, followed the Hermetic custom and reserved their truth for the few who were ready to comprehend and master it. From lip to ear, the truth has been handed down among the few. There have always been a few initiates in each generation in the various lands of the earth who kept alive the sacred flame of the Hermetic teachings, and such have always been willing to use their lamps to relight the lesser lamps of the outside world, when the light of truth grew dim and clouded by reason of neglect, and when the wicks became clogged with foreign matter. There were always a few to tend faithfully the altar of the truth, upon which was kept alight the perpetual lamp of wisdom. These men devoted their lives to the labor of love, which the poet has so well stated in his lines. "Oh, let not the flame die out, cherished age after age in its dark cavern, in its holy temples cherished. Fed by pure ministers of love, let not the flame die out." These men have never sought popular approval, nor numbers of followers. They are indifferent to these things, for they know how few there are in each generation who are ready for the truth, or who would recognize it if it were presented to them. They reserve the strong meat for men, while others furnish the milk for babes. They reserve their pearls of wisdom for the few elect who recognize their value and who wear them in their crowns instead of casting them before the materialistic, vulgar swine who would trample them in the mud and mix them with their disgusting mental food. But still these men have never forgotten or overlooked the original teachings of Hermes regarding the passing on of the words of truth to those ready to receive it, which teaching is stated in the Kybalion as follows: "Where fall the footsteps of the master, the ears of those ready for his teaching open wide." And again, "When the ears of the student are ready to hear, then cometh the lips to fill them with wisdom." But their customary attitude has always been strictly in accordance with the other Hermetic aphorism, also in the Kybalion: "The lips of wisdom are closed, except to the ears of understanding." There are those who have criticized this attitude of the Hermetists, and who have claimed that they did not manifest the proper spirit in their policy of seclusion and reticence. But a moment's glance back over the pages of history will show the wisdom of the masters, who knew the folly of attempting to teach to the world that which it was neither ready or willing to receive. The Hermetists have never sought to be martyrs, and have instead sat silently aside with a pitying smile on their closed lips, while the heathen raged noisily about them in their customary amusement of putting to death and torture the honest but misguided enthusiasts who imagined that they could force upon a race of barbarians the truth capable of being understood only by the elect who had advanced along the path. And the spirit of persecution has not as yet died out in the land. There are certain Hermetic teachings which, if publicly promulgated, would bring down upon the teachers a great cry of scorn and revilement from the multitude, who would again raise the cry of crucify, crucify. In this little work, we have endeavored to give you an idea of the fundamental teachings of the Kybalion, striving to give you the working principles, leaving you to apply them yourselves rather than attempting to work out the teaching in detail. If you are a true student, you will be able to work out and apply these principles. If not, then you must develop yourself into one, for otherwise the Hermetic teachings will be as words, words, words to you. The Three Initiates. Chapter 1. The Hermetic Philosophy. The lips of wisdom are closed, except to the ears of understanding. The Kybalion. From old Egypt have come the fundamental esoteric and occult teachings which have so strongly influenced the philosophies of all races, nations, and peoples for several thousand years. Egypt, the home of the pyramids and the Sphinx, was the birthplace of the hidden wisdom and mystic teachings. From her secret doctrine, all nations have borrowed. India, Persia, Chaldea, Media, China, Japan, Assyria, ancient Greece and Rome, and other ancient countries partook liberally at the feast of knowledge which the hierophants and masters of the land of Isis so freely provided for those who came prepared to partake of the great store of mystic and occult lore which the masterminds of that ancient land had gathered together. In ancient Egypt dwelt the great adepts and masters who have never been surpassed, and who seldom have been equaled during the centuries that have taken their processional flight since the days of the great Hermes. In Egypt was located the great lodge of lodges of the mystics. At the doors of her temples entered the neophytes, who afterward, as hierophants, adepts, and masters, traveled to the four corners of the earth, carrying with them the precious knowledge which they were ready, anxious, and willing to pass on to those who were ready to receive the same. All students of the occult recognize the debt that they owe to these venerable masters of that ancient land. But among these great masters of ancient Egypt, there once dwelt one of whom masters hailed as the Master of Masters. This man, if man indeed he was, dwelt in Egypt in the earliest days. He was known as Hermes Trismegistus. He was the father of the occult wisdom, the founder of astrology, the discoverer of alchemy. The details of his life story are lost to history owing to the lapse of the years, though several of the ancient countries disputed with each other in their claims to the honor of having furnished his birthplace, and this thousands of years ago. The date of his sojourn in Egypt, in that his last incarnation on this planet, is not now known, but it has been fixed at the early days of the oldest dynasties of Egypt, long before the days of Moses. The best authorities regard him as a contemporary of Abraham, and some of the Jewish traditions go so far as to claim that Abraham acquired a portion of his mystic knowledge from Hermes himself. As the years rolled by after his passing from this plane of life, tradition recording that he lived 300 years in the flesh, the Egyptians deified Hermes and made him one of their gods under the name of Thoth. Years after, the people of ancient Greece also made him one of their many gods, calling him Hermes, the god of wisdom. The Egyptians revered his memory for many centuries, yes, tens of centuries, calling him the scribe of the gods, and bestowing upon him distinctively his ancient title Trismegistus, which means the thrice great, the great great, the greatest great, etc. In all the ancient
Masonic truth of Taurus the Bull, Venus, Jupiter, and Introduction to True Astrology. Introduction. What is astrology? For the ancients, the knowledge of the stars was treated as the knowledge of God. This knowledge of the heavens explained the secret, esoteric, occulted forces of God, forces that manifested themselves according to the ancients through two main factors. First, the fixed stars that formed the astronomical constellations. Second, the entropic stars, or the planets, which move across the constellational backdrop of the fixed stars. These two factors formed what the ancients treated as the most serious form of study, science. Today, science envelops all fields of research and serious study. In contrast, there was only one science for the ancients, and it was the science of star knowledge. Star knowledge, which, by virtue of its purpose, was also the knowledge of heaven, of God. The seriousness with which the ancients practiced this science is consecrated in their stone monuments as eternal as time itself, and astronomically matched down here on Earth, exactly to their star twin double in the fixed constellational backdrop. Matching their stone monuments precisely to their constellational star match had to begin before they even laid down one stone. It had to begin first, star to paper. The seriousness and precision of the science is evidenced in the Giza Plateau, where its three pyramids are precisely star to paper, stone to star, matched to Orion's belt, while the Sphinx toward Leo and Sirius. The Druids matched star to paper, stone to star, their Stonehenge monument, calculated precisely to the patterns, phases, and cycles of the moon and sun. And the Aztecs and Mayans, like the Egyptians, aligned their sun and moon pyramids not only to true north and south within degrees of accuracy, but they too matched in stone the fixed constellational events of the heavens, while also impressively including Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto, absolutely debunking the modern notions that these planets in our solar system are recent discoveries. This science, by the ancients, was called magic. When one applied this science and matched their identity and way of life to the stars, magical things would happen. Becoming proficient in this science unites one here on earth with God in the heavens, and the very meaning of alchemy. The way to match oneself today in modern day society, like the ancients did, to unlock alchemy in their self, one must practice the star knowledge as the Druid, Aztec, Mayan, and Egyptian astronomers. Notice, not astrologer, which is today's practice born from astronomy, but, as will be revealed, lacks truth to it, much less a way to unlock alchemy in you. One must approach star knowledge today the same as one back then, as a serious science with precise and observable data points that are star to paper, self to star. In practice, you must match yourself astronomically to the true database fixed constellations that the entropic planets were in at the time of your birth. One way to do so is by observing the research and evidence like NASA would, with extreme astronomical precision. Which means that if you think you are a Taurus, think again. If you were born between the dates of April 19th and May 13th, you are an Aries. And a true Taurus, if you were born between May 14th and June 21st. This means for some of you Taurus out there watching this, you remain a Taurus, like me. So go ahead. You can be stubborn about this one. So, if you can get past the original shock and let your true sign settle in, how about I share with you the knowledge that can then unlock alchemy for you? Part 2, the truth of Taurus the Bull, aka Jupiter. On the morning of December 15th, 1989, at 1 a.m. local Manhattan, New York time. Arturo Timotica, illegally installed in front of the financial offices known as Wall Street. His sculpture name, Charging Pool, as a sign of Taurus was setting in the west.
5 years after opening its eye to the cosmos, the Hubble Space Telescope set its sights upon a seemingly empty patch of sky near the constellation Ursa Major. Staring into the void for 10 days, the telescope captured 342 images in ultraviolet, visible, and infrared light. The compilation revealed a sea of galaxies, stretching across time, back to their very origins. Humanity.
The young Christianity was closer to the stars than Judaism. When Emperor Constantine considered Christianity to be legitimate, Jesus' birthday was moved to December 25th, the winter solstice. Fittingly, this had already been a Roman feast day. Astrology, on the other hand, was initially frowned upon in the Christian West. It was considered idolatry. Nevertheless, astrology came into fashion in the Middle Ages. We can even date the time almost to the year when this happened. In 1108, the Archbishop of York was refused a Christian burial because a book on astrology had been found under his pillow. In 1109, the English scholar Adelhard of Bath named astrology the knowledge of the past, the present, and the future. Since then, there has been no significant rejection of astrology. The entire medicine was practiced according to the stars. For bloodletting, there were complicated rules, which assigned each part of the body to a sign of the zodiac and thus to daytimes and hours. Medicinal herbs could be picked and administered only on certain nights. Even the analysis of urine depended on the position of the planets. There were hours for government treaties, groundbreaking ceremonies, battles, and receptions, for traveling, playing chess, and changing clothes. The astrologer moved out with the troops, advised the commander who gave the signal to mount and march. The Habsburg Emperor Maximilian suffered all his life from the pressure of being a child of Saturn, and the German painter Albrecht.
Hello Capricorn, welcome to your reading. I hope you're doing great. Let's see what messages we have for you today for Capricorn. Dang, Capricorn, you have the 10 of Cups out first. An excellent card to start out with. Okay, I'm getting it like this. You guys have an idea of what you want. You have an idea of what could be really good for your life. Expect even greater than that. What would it feel like to have even double of what you're imagining? What would it feel like to have even double the amount of blessings that you're asking for? Because that is what you're worthy of. You have the 7 of Wands. Capricorn, right now you guys are literally stepping away from any energies that you've been feeling has been holding you down. You're stepping away from anything that you feel like it's a battle the whole time. You feel like you have to almost be in this state of, in this state of like survival with the whole time, in a state of fighting the whole time, in a state of like fighting the whole time, it's like almost always trying to get on your feet with this situation. And then when you have one foot on the ground, it's like the other is a little bit shaky. I'm also getting this, like a hazardous time that you guys could have gone through, like a time where it's like it feels like a hazard around you, but you actually bloomed. You grew like a flower in this like hazardous environment. Right now, I could also be asking for a sign. You could really just want the universe to tell you exactly what to